Hi everybody, I'm Mike McCrory and this is Would You Make It? Last year I made a standing desk for myself using the FlexiSpot E5 standing desk frame. This time around I'm going to use the FlexiSpot Pro Plus E7 standing desk frame, which has thicker leg columns and the capacity to hold more than 350 pounds. I have this stack of hickory that I'm going to mill up and make into a desktop, and then I'll put it all together. So let's get started. I'm starting with 4/4 hickory in various widths. These boards are 8 feet long, and I'm going to make the desk about 6.5 feet long, so I'm cutting off the excess. I wish the material was thicker, but this was all I could find without spending too much effort, but it was really inexpensive, so I couldn't pass it up. Next, I'll joint the bottom face and then run each board through the planer. Next, I'll run one edge through the jointer so that I can run the boards along the table saw fence to get straight edges on both sides to prepare for the glue up. I'm going to use biscuit joints to help keep everything aligned during the glue up, so I'm drawing straight lines across the top to mark where each biscuit will go. And then I'll use my biscuit jointer to cut the slots for number 20 biscuits. I have parchment paper on the top of my workbench to make sure the desktop doesn't get glued to my workbench, but I have to be careful that the parchment paper doesn't get pulled into the glue joint. I'll use clamps to persuade the pieces to come together. Then I'll put some large cawls across the desktop so that I can clamp it down to my workbench to make sure it glues up flat. After letting the glue cure for a few days, I'll run it through the drum sander. This is a pretty heavy piece of wood to handle by myself, so I've set up in-feed and out-feed rollers at the same height as the sanding bed, and then I have my daughter helping me to feed it through the sander. Any slight movement up or down while feeding it into the sander will result in a groove in the desktop, so I need to proceed very carefully at this point because I don't have a lot of excess thickness to make any mistakes. With my track saw, I'll cut the desktop to length on both ends. Next, I'll use a jig that I made for my other desk last year to cut grooves for pencils and pens. I'm using a round nose router bit with a 1/2 inch diameter or a 1/4 inch radius. Then I have a lot of hand sanding to do to remove the scratches from the drum sander that had 100 grit sandpaper in it. I'm sanding the top to 180 grit. Next, I'll use a 1/2 inch round over bit along 3 sides of the top. I won't round over the back side because it's going against the wall. I had a bit of tear out, so I switched to a climb cut to prevent more tear out, and then I finished up with a final pass in the proper direction. I had to address the tear out with some extra sanding. Next, I'll cut the holes for the recessed outlets. I'll put one in each corner near the back of the desk. I'll start with a 5/16 inch drill bit to make the holes for my jigsaw blade. I don't normally stain wood, but I felt that this hickory needed to be a little bit more vibrant, so I'm using a golden oak stain. Now it's time to assemble the desk frame. I like how the screws are individually packaged and labeled, so it makes it easy to know which screws to use where. I won't show the whole thing, but it was quite easy to assemble. Unlike the desk I made last year, which I had to assemble inside my office because it was too big to fit through my door, I'm able to put this desk together here and do everything upside down, so it makes the assembly much easier than last time. Hookup is easy, and with this newer model they provide a cable management tray to conceal the cables, so I didn't have to mess around with cable ties this time. That's a big improvement over the one I have in my office. By the way, FlexiSpot will be providing a special promotion for this E7 desk frame and other products during Black Friday. I've put details of the sale at the end of this video as well as in the description. Now it's time to work on the drawer, so I'll mill up some hickory for the drawer box, drawer face, and the runners. The drawer will be fairly shallow, with drawer box sides cut to 2 1/4 inches. And these pieces only need to be a 1/2 inch thick, so I'll cut them on the bandsaw to be 5/8 of an inch thick, and then finish them up on the sander. Next, I'll cut a groove along the inside face of each drawer piece for the 1/4 inch plywood bottom to fit into. And then I'll cut a 45-degree miter on each of the corners. I'm starting with the drawer sides, which are about 13 inches long. I'm using a stop block on my miter gauge to get the right length. Next, I'll cut the front and back pieces, which are closer to 24 inches in length. Next, I'll glue everything up. For the drawer runners, I'm gluing a thin piece onto the bottom of these 2 1/4 inch pieces. Next, I'll drill holes through each of the drawer runners so that they can be screwed into the bottom of the desk. I'm starting with a 5/16 inch drill bit and going partway down to make room for the screw head, and then I'll finish up with a 3/16 inch drill bit for the threaded portion of the screw to fit through. I position the drawer runners so that the drawer box will be centered, and then I mark the position of each screw hole by pushing the screw down hard with a screwdriver. And then I'll drill a pilot hole for each screw. The top of the drawer hits the bottom of the desk when I slide it in, but that's only because everything is upside down. When the desk is right side up, gravity will be working in the proper direction so that there's no collision. Next, I'll drill holes for 3 screws to attach the drawer front. The last thing for the assembly is to attach the control module, so I'm screwing that onto the right side of the desk. And it works. Next, I'll apply some Odie's oil to provide a nice protective coating for the desk. I had already applied it to the bottom side before attaching the desk frame to the underside of the desk. It doesn't take very much of this product, it just needs a lot of rubbing with a 3M pad, and then I buff it off with a paper towel. By the way, I forgot to mention at the beginning, but I'm making this desk for the office in my daughter's yoga studio. And now it's time to carry it in. While we're finishing the installation, here are a few other things that I've been working on in her studio. I made these letters out of cherry on my CNC router and added the LED lighting. TAO stands for The Art of Us. And I made these little cookies with my CNC and laser that students place on their mats to signal that it's okay to be touched by an instructor. And we installed this LVP flooring throughout, except for each yoga studio, which already had real maple hardwood. I made these cabinets out of oak plywood to hold all of their accessories. And I made these large dowels on my lathe out of glued up pieces of walnut and ash. My daughter and I made this fun mirror frame on my CNC out of MDF. And a whole bunch of shelves out of oak plywood and labels on my laser. So here's my daughter trying out her new desk. Happy Black Friday. If you happen to be watching this video during the Black Friday season in 2022, FlexiSpot will be offering up to 50% off their regular prices. For this E7 desk frame, there will be a flash sale on November 25th with $160 off and $120 off for the sale period thereafter. So I gotta ask, would you make it?